Hi, everybody. Elise Labott with Cosmopolitics here with Tara Palmeri of the Red Letter.
Yeah.
And welcome, Tara.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. I'm really happy to be with you, Elise, since you are, a foreign policy expert. You spent so many years in journalism covering global affairs and the State Department, which is why when I got this tip a few weeks ago about this group within the State Department that is growing in a way that's almost like the Federalist Society for State Department, I had to call you up and say, Elise, like, had you heard about this?
I
Had
didn't
you
I
seen
didn't hear
anything?
about it. I think people like thought, that this was somewhere where the Trump administration was actually sourcing people, but no, it looks like the Trump administration is actually creating this kind of new society. And I want to bring everybody to all my viewers and readers over to Tara Palmeri's relatively new Substack. What have you been
Yeah.
doing for about a month or two now?
Yeah, I'm about 2 months in. It's been really fun. Love the Substack community. And
Called
this
the
is
Red
our second.
Letter. It's called the
Yeah, the
Red
red
Letter.
letter. Yep.
And the piece we're talking about is called Inside the Deep State. But Tara's got all kinds of scoops there. You'll find all of the kind of scoops that you are accustomed to finding her. I think we met when you were at ABC, but then she
Yeah.
was at Politico and Puck and now here at Substack, and also has a YouTube show. So today we're talking about Inside the MAGA Deep State. So tell us a little bit about this piece. It's really interesting, because everyone remembers Project 2025 and how the Trump administration was working with these conservatives to kind of get rid of the civil service. But now it looks like they're creating this kind of diplomatic corps of their own.
Right. So, I mean, you can't get rid of the entire civil service, right? I mean,
Right.
this is
Thousands of
uh,
people.
thousands of people, exactly. And you need them. And, in the same way that the Federalist Society has helped, like, find judges, right, to place in high positions, there's a new nonprofit. It actually launched in the final years of the Biden administration, I mean, the final months, excuse me, in October. They there are a number of retired former civil servants, so they should be they're diplomats, non-political. They go from administration to administration, no matter who's in charge, and they carry out the mission of the president and what they want them to do, right? But these people, they came together and they said, you know what? We feel like there isn't a safe space for us to talk. We feel like if we talk about our politics, that there's a black mark on us. And they were upset about COVID. They were upset about the George Floyd riots, or the Black Lives Matter, the George Floyd riots, Black Lives Matter movement. They felt that there was a lot of censorship going on. And actually, though, within State Department, you would know this. You're really not supposed to talk about politics at work, right? It's there's a Hatch Act. You're not actually supposed to take part in any sort of political activity at work. And this isn't to say that this fellowship that was created, this nonprofit, the Benjamin Franklin Fellowship, is um, violating the Hatch Act. I mean, they meet off campus like a lot of these affinity groups do, but it just has such a political tone, and the people that are inside of it, the ones that are still in the civil service, they seem to have risen up the ranks within Marco Rubio's State Department. And I'll give you some examples of that later. But it really does seem to have a political tinge to it,
So
more so.
you said it was started by some former career officials. They started in October. Who are these officials?
I'll read their names off for you, just because they're not top of mind. You may not have heard of them because they're civil servants. They're not necessarily front facing. Yeah, one of them is, well, you would know some of the bigger names that are part of this group, like James Carafano, right? I mean, he's
Yeah, sure. The former foreign policy director of the Heritage, and also he was one of the primary architects of Project 2025, if you'll remember.
Yep, Pam Pryor, who is also very Trumpy. She was the State Department's Faith Outreach Initiative. She was a part of that. Victoria Coates, she's
Victoria
Trump's.
Coates, former foreign policy director to Ted Cruz. Then she was in the Trump administration in a variety of positions. In fact, some people thought that she was that anonymous writer who was writing about the Trump administration. Obviously, it wasn't her, but those are some pretty names that are firmly kind of entrenched in the Trump foreign policy apparatus.
Right. And so the co-founders though were Simon Hankinson. I don't know if you knew who he was, Philip Linderman and Matt Boyce, but clearly they've attracted like some pretty big names in the foreign policy world. I also want to mention that Brian Hook, who was Trump's former special envoy to Iran during the first administration, and he then had his security clearance revoked during the Trump transition, but he was expected to come back again.
Yeah,
And
Brian Hook was expected to be Deputy Secretary of State. And then I don't know what happened. I think we talked about this the last time you were on, but there was all this stuff about these two camps in the two foreign policy camps in the Trump administration. And one of the camps, like these were people that were very loyal to Mike Pompeo, but these were like Donald Trump Jr. and Tucker Carlson and those kind of guys were trying to get those kind of they weren't they are neocons, but they were trying to get them out for other reasons. So Brian Hook is an interesting character, and I think he got a raw deal because he's a pretty decent foreign policy hand.
right. Yeah, I actually got to know him on the trip to North Korea with Mike Pompeo. He was on that trip. So yeah, these are like some heavy hitters. They're
Yeah,
all part of this Benjamin Franklin Fellowship, which just started again in October 2024, and it's really punched above its weight considering it's only been around for so long. For example, Lou Oleski, he is a fellow, and the fact that he was promoted um, and jumped up the ranks. He's only in his 30s, by the way, and he was a
now he's running the
probationary off.
Foreign Service, right?
Exactly. He's a probationary officer, and now he's the head of human resources in the Foreign Service. It's a huge job. This is the kind of job you get in your like 50s, essentially, right? I mean, this is the kind of job where you would have to wait decades. I spoke to President Biden's former State Department spokesperson, Ned Price. You might remember him. I'm sure for
Sure.
some of you listeners, you would remember him, of course. And he said of Lou, he's someone who's taken a role beyond his grade and his rank within the department. Hundreds of people have been passed over for much higher grades.
Well,
And
forget about the rank and the grade. What about the experience and the knowledge? I mean,
mhm.
this guy who, knows almost nothing about the Foreign Service and their policies is now directing the kind of human resources for the Foreign Service. It's really, just kind of keeping in with this administration's it's almost like they want the most inexperienced people in these positions.
I know. Well, Ned said to me he's just concerned that the fellowship is becoming some sort of shadow MAGA group for the State Department
Right.
employees, and that at the end of the day, the State Department, they are best when they
Or
serve with
nonpartisan.
exactly, and of course, every administration brings in their own, their own. You could call them. What's the exact name for the diplomats that come over with the administration?
Well, they're political appointees, right?
Yeah,
They're
political
Schedule
appointees.
C. They're called Schedule C, and they
Schedule
bring in
C.
the
There you go.
they bring in these political appointees. Sometimes ambassadors obviously like are donors and made a lot of money, but most of these political all of the political appointees typically have a lot of experience. I will say in this administration they don't have a ton of experience. I want to your point about that this is like a shadow kind of MAGA, you wrote that this is an invitation only membership process. So walk us through like what are the criteria for membership?
Well, you have to adhere to their guiding principles. And I don't know that it's necessarily membership only. Like you have to
Yeah, it's
become
a
a member.
membership. It says on their website that it's a membership only. And
Okay.
so as you said, this membership only, let's talk about these guiding principles. These are, MAGA principles, right? They have
Yeah, they
these
are.
eight
Yeah.
principles.
Basically,
Um,
just defend sovereignty, obviously, at the border,
America
uh,
first.
America
They call
first.
it national interest first, but this is America first.
And a really big
Um,
part of it is anti-DEI as well. Um, Here's some of the language. The professional U.S. diplomatic and consular corps should based on merit, recruit, select, assign, and promote Americans of all backgrounds from across the country without discrimination or preference on the basis of race, ethnicity, sex, or other immutable characteristics. And when I spoke to Simon Hankinson about this, that was a really big issue for him, was that he felt that white men were being discriminated against in the State Department, and that was a big reason why they
Why most of them are white men and with a couple white women sprinkled in.
yeah, so he felt that they were being discriminated against. Here's what he said: there was a definite sense that if you stepped out of line or had an opinion that wasn't aligned with the progressive ideology, you were going to get a black mark on your reputation that was going to make further progress in your career pretty much impossible. And if you look at the website, sure, he points out, doesn't say the word Republican, but everything is very conservative. The videos that they feature, Megyn Kelly video, Barry Weiss video, a video with Trump's former national security spokesperson, Michael Anton. These there are the titles of the videos are the censorship industrial complex must be dismantled. President Reagan's recipe for peace. Like, if you looked at this, you would think to yourself, this is for conservatives, it's for Republicans.
Right.
And
And look, I will agree that, having covered the State Department for many years, it is true that, people with conservative views are not given, if you kind of toe the line, the State Department is generally, it is true that they're nonpartisan,
Mhm.
but it is true that the upper echelons of the management, like if you are in a Democratic administration, and you have a black mark on you, you will have a black mark on you if you try to introduce some conservative views. But look, we've seen that and we're talking about Brian Hook. Brian Hook fired or demoted some people on his staff who were holdovers from the Biden administration. So, it is true that, both sides do it. Um, yes, all these people are nonpartisan and they serve regardless, but it is interesting to see who advances based on their ideology. There aren't a lot of people at the top echelons of the Foreign Service who, in this day and age, I think it was different maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's
Um,
certainly very, very risky. And even when I asked Simon, like, when you created this, did you think that this would become a feeder for people into top positions? Is that what you were thinking? And he said to me pretty upfront, we didn't think that that would happen, but if it did, okay. He said, if you were going to go to select a judge and you went to your local Catholic church on Sunday and you saw who showed up, I mean, you're more likely to find someone who's anti-abortion than someone who's pro-choice, right? So it sort of has helped them self-identify, and he sees the value in that, and I don't think they're stepping away from that. I got the feeling from him that they would like to be an affinity group. Affinity groups were actually created to help people who were not white men sort of be able to network and to have some sort of representation at the State Department. It's a non-employee. It's a group for employees within that's not necessarily it's affiliated with the State Department, but it's not like officially through the State Department.
it can't
Uh,
be official because the things that they're advocating are, kind of against, state, not the principles themselves, but having these political principles. Let's go over some more of them. American sovereignty and border defense, national interest first. It says national interest first. We're talking about America first, limited foreign intervention, immigration sovereignty, conditional multilateralism. I mean, um, it's a very MAGA type of principles. And the question is, as you rightly say, is Marco Rubio using, I don't know, to be quite honest, I don't know how much influence he has even over his own hires. But the question is Marco Rubio or the administration writ large using this as a kind of litmus test for State Department hires or
that's
National Security Council hires or Defense Department hires? Like, any is there any discussion of, them wanting to get into the Defense Department or any of the other agencies in a foreign policy position, energy department, that type of stuff?
I from my reporting, I found that it was mostly foreign policy and the like national security apparatus that the BFF, as they call themselves, was sort of seen as a feeder for. Whether it's you know like Simon said, it's not implicitly in a feeder, but it has sort of become one. And I think the fact that you have Lou Oleski coming from the fellowship in a human resources role, top human resources role at the State Department, that certainly, helps the fellows to get a an in. And I talked to a career diplomat who said it just like came out of nowhere. It's clearly partisan in nature. And this person said, "quote The signal is up. If you sign up, then we'll make you a senior person." So that is how the fellow career officials and diplomats feel about this group. That if you sign up for it, you will see your career advance.
Um, have you talked to, what is there any kind of oversight exists for this within the State Department? Have you talked, what is the State Department saying about it?
I reached out to Lou. I didn't hear back. And I reached out to Marco Rubio spokesperson. I didn't hear back either. I don't think that they would ever really like acknowledge that an outside group had any sort of influence. But Trump's team, they took, but these were all civil. The reason they can't acknowledge it is because it violates the Hatch
Exactly.
Act. Exactly. So it's this isn't like you said, Schedule C employees. These are federal employees. Schedule F. They're non-political. They're not supposed to be engaging. They're not even supposed to be sharing really their political opinions or doing any sort of political work on campus. And I'm not saying that they are, but here's what one of their recent events. They held one before President Trump left for Saudi Arabia, and the name of the event was Saudi Arabia and the U.S. national interest. They also had one in February called Arctic Horizon for the new administration, and that's obviously about Greenland. And as we know, President Trump has taken a liking to trying to acquire Greenland. So it's interesting that they feel like they need this safe space. And this is from Hankinson again. He's one of the founders. He says, quote, "We have the Hatch Act, and you're supposed to support the administration and the career chain of command. But there was this definite sense that if you stepped out of line, you were going to get a black mark on your reputation, that if you weren't progressive enough. So that was going to make further progress in your career pretty much impossible. So this is their way of countering it. And so in some ways, it's like they're building their own deep state."
Well, the question is if these guys are moving into, foreign service or civil service positions and then rising up through the ranks through this feeder, it's very interesting. And I mean, it's interesting about what effects it might have on the State Department culture writ large. Like, we both know, as we've been talking about, the State Department is supposed to be apolitical.
Mhm.
Politics stops at the water's edge. I know that's not always, it's like a cliche, but it really is true. I would say, I've covered about 8 or 9 administrations now, and I would say until Mike Pompeo, and I wrote this for Foreign Policy, that Mike Pompeo was the worst Secretary of State. This was when I like was able to jump off the high board of, kind of reporting and do more analysis. Mike Pompeo, why do I think he was the worst Secretary of State? Because he was the one that made injected politics um, into the State Department. Even Hillary Clinton, who said politics is their DNA, really was apolitical at the State Department. She worked with Republicans until Benghazi. I think she worked very well with the Republicans on the Hill. John Kerry, who ran for president, really kind of kept an apolitical. But when it came to Mike Pompeo, he was, downright nasty to Democrats on the Hill. We saw what happened with this litmus test. And it seems like, even though, it seems like Marco Rubio is trying to shield himself from this, but if you start to have this like politics infects the State Department, what is the message this sends to diplomatic relationships with other countries?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly there's a feeling that politics is infecting the State Department, and like you said, these people they stay on from one administration to another. It's one of those like they take pride in the fact that they're apolitical. Like there's a real sense of pride for civil servants that they carry out the mission of the country no matter who's in charge. And I think it's bad for morale. Not that the last Trump administration wasn't bad for morale for the civil service. I mean, you saw so many people quit.
And
But
people were like kind of forced out. And now, so many people are kind of let go.
mm,
It's really depressing. We have just a couple minutes left. So what did you think of the president's trip to the Mideast?
oh, I thought it was interesting. Clearly, it was more about money and deals than anything else. I think Trump is growing a little weary with Netanyahu, and that's why he didn't make a stop there. And Gaza was really not on the table at all. Surprise, surprise with the Iran deal, if they're actually gonna follow up on it and if it's really gonna be anything. But that's the thing with Trump. There's a lot of handshaking and deals, but does it ever really follow through? So we'll have to see.
Well, and I think it was almost kind of like, look, when he made that speech, like, oh, you don't need us with our interventionist. We're going to leave you the hell alone. And, basically saying, like, we're open for business, make a deal with me, and I'll just, hands off. You can do whatever you want politically. You don't need to tell us what to do. And I think he also, when he talks about these countries, he's in awe of he's obviously in awe of the money, but I think he's also in awe of the power that
Mm,
these rulers have. There's sheikdoms or royal
yeah.
kingdoms. He's just in awe of that, and this absolute power that they wield. And I think it's interesting. He did have a successful week in terms of bringing in deals for the United States, but at what cost, right?
Yeah, he loves the pageantry. He loves the gilded life, the opulence. He thinks of, I just had a guest on one of my shows saying he thinks of the Gulf countries as a ATM. But
Yeah,
how
no,
much
I've said that myself. Like he thinks of them as an ATM, but what is he giving? Like, I think it was personally the right decision to give up to uh lift the sanctions on Syria, but he made quite clear that he did it because, MBS asked him to. So if these leaders, like if the prime minister of Qatar asks him to do something and he's willing to make a deal with Trump, what else is Trump willing to do for the money? That's really, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
yeah.
We'll have to see. What is he willing to do for it?
Yeah, well, Tara, thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining
thank you,
us.
Elise.
Everybody, check out the Red Letter. Tara has that scoop on Inside the MAGA State Department, but also so much else. Check her out on YouTube. I'm Elise Labott with Cosmopolitics. Thanks for joining us, Tara. Look forward to having you again.
Thank you. And everyone check out Elise's work. Thanks, guys.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Cheers.